Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. Dan here with you, as always. Big thanks for tuning into this episode, where we're going to talk some more green and gold coming up a little bit later on in the episode. Packers obviously playing fairly well, pretty well in the last couple weeks, right? But if there was still something that gave you a little bit of pause for this Packers team, what would it be? I got a few different things out there. They're getting better. It is getting better. It looked good the last couple weeks, but is there still something where you're just not quite ready to jump on the bandwagon or ready to declare, all right, it's fixed, good to go, super confident this team is going to be hoisting the Lombardi Trophy when it's all said and done? Before that, though, new segment here, debuting it. Here's the thing, kind of a little commentary sort of thing, and going to get to my grind, my gears here right after that. But here's the thing, it's just kind of like a little, again, like I said, commentary, opinion piece, that sort of thing. And I want to make the debut of this, talking a little Badger football here, because here's the thing. Badger football is in some serious trouble, and I honestly don't see them getting out of this hole anytime soon. I think that's what we got to call it. It's a hole. I mean, you got players leaving the program, which is to be expected, transfer portal. You are looking for a new offensive coordinator because that didn't work with Phil Longo. You don't have a quarterback right now. You don't have an identity of this team. Are you a run? Are you a pass? You know, what are they trying to do on defense? 1 week you're holding Oregon. Your defense is keeping you in the game, and then you allow like 44 to Nebraska and the Gophers putting up 24 on you. Like, what's the identity? What's going on here? And you look at the schedule for 2025, you can make the case it's harder than this year. So I don't see how this Badger football team, how Luke Fickell can turn this thing around within a year. What is that, immediate expectation? It's so crazy to think that just a couple years ago when he was hired, and yes, there was a lot of Badger fans that still wanted Jimmy Leonhard, or there was a lot of fans, too, that said, feel bad for Jimmy Leonhard, but I get it. You're excited about Luke Fickell coming over because you probably didn't think you were going to get a guy like that. And it has not lived up to even close to the expectation. Even if you had lower expectations, it probably hasn't even lived up to that. And I don't know what this future holds, the immediate future, but I don't have a good feeling on it because there's so many questions heading into year 3. This is you're banging beating the drum on this, but it's such a crucial offseason, but it's not going to get fixed in a year. When you add in that you're going to bring in a new offensive coordinator, who's going to be the quarterback? What is your identity? How are you going to fix the defense? Oh, and you've got another brutal schedule for next year. I mean, I think the goal might be just to get to 6 wins so you can be bowl eligible next year. But the expectation of this team taking the jump to compete for national championships, especially with the expanded college football playoff and that, it has taken a tumble down. And it ain't going to get any easier because of the expansion of the Big Ten Conference with, teams like Oregon in it and the stalwarts that are always there of Ohio State and such. I just don't have a good feeling. And the thing is, in my lifetime, I'm almost 40 years old, but I've never really gone through this. I've never really experienced an offseason like this, or where the program is kind of spinning its wheels like I am right now with this Badger football team. And that's frustrating. And it's kind of scary to think about. So, I don't know. It might be some dark years for this Badger football team in the near future. I think it's going to be. I hope I'm wrong, but I think it's going to be. Now, Badger football could actually be my grind my gears. It could be. But I'll switch it up here a little bit because, well, here in Wisconsin, the deer hunting rifle season is in the books. And from a hunting, getting deer, seeing deer perspective, this was one of the worst seasons I've ever had. The only thing that made it not the worst season ever is because my son Hudson sat with me for the first time for a few hours on the Sunday of opening weekend. Got him up at 4 a.m., sat out in the stand for a few hours, took his BB gun out there. So that was a cool thing to share, a memory to share, something I'll remember for a long time. We didn't see any deer, didn't get anything, but the fact that he sat with me in a buddy stand and hung out for a few hours, got up early in the morning, got him in his blaze orange and that, and the fact that he sat with me, that's a really cool memory that will stay with me for the rest of my life, and it got him the taste of going deer hunting and such. Sounds like he's into it and wants to do it again and that. But that was the only thing that saved it from being an awful deer season. So I know it kind of sounds weird that this is my grind my gears, but I just saw the DNR numbers and they said the numbers are up in terms of deer harvest and all that. And I just like, dude, where are they, man? Because there wasn't even a lot of shooting around my area. I saw the ears of one deer and that was it. So I don't know what's going on, but now it's back to the drawing board. It's an off season full of like trying to figure out what to do differently, and that. But that's why it's a grind my gears for me, because just from the, seeing deer and getting deer perspective, it was one of the worst. It was one of the worst, and it's frustrating. I get it. It's part of the thing. It's hunting. It's not going to be easy in that, but. Sometimes when you dedicate a lot of time and you sit out there in the cold for almost 12 hours and such and you don't see anything, it gets frustrating. It kind of grinds your gears. So that's why that's my grind my gears for this week. All right, let's get into it, though. Let's talk some more Packers as we get set for this big game against the Lions of Detroit coming up here as the regular season is fast approaching the conclusion here, heading into Week 14 after the Broncos taking down the Browns last night. We are officially on to Week 14. Man, just flying on by, baby. But Packers, 3 more road games, 2 more home games on the schedule as things stand right now. Doesn't look like they'll have a home playoff game if they make the playoffs, but we'll see how everything kind of finishes off here. But one game at a time during this portion of the schedule coming up here for the Packers, which is still, Detroit, obviously we know this Thursday game is going to be incredibly tough. Seattle's, they're in a division race right now, leading their division. That's at Seattle. That'll be a tough game. New Orleans, I think, is playing better. Maybe a little bit more of a challenge than what it looked like maybe just a few weeks ago. Of course, at Minnesota is going to be a very tough challenge too. And Chicago would love nothing more than to come to Lambeau Field at the end of the season and give the Packers a loss. So you look at these final 5 games of the regular season, and it's going to be a tough finish. But I think a good test, too, for a team that has playoff aspirations, some high goals, and why not have a tough schedule heading into the postseason here, too. So making sure you're still focused and eye on the prize and that sort of thing. But first things first, one game at a time here. And when we get to this game with the Lions, and I guess for the rest of the few weeks here of this regular season, if there was still something, and I think we could all agree the last couple weeks has been really good, right? I mean, the Packers have played well. Yes, they beat up on a banged-up 49ers team. They took down a Dolphins team that looked like they were more concerned at times of just trying to stay warm. I mean, they took care of business over there. But wins are wins. And they have been playing better. Run defense looks like it's been playing better, right? Jeff Hafley, Packers defensive coordinator who chatted with the media yesterday, alluded to it, that he thinks that the last few weeks the run defense has been, quote, really good. I think there's a little bit more to it. I think part of it is it plays into complementary football with the Packers, whereas Packers are controlling the clock. They're able to run the football. They're putting teams in holes, and teams aren't able to run as much. But it all works out. Nonetheless, back to the question. If there was something that maybe still concerns you, maybe you still have a little bit of question about. So, obviously, Packers, again, been playing incredibly well these last couple weeks, but is there still one thing that you're like, yeah, you know what? Okay, cool, last couple weeks been good, but I'm still not ready. I'm not still 100% sold, or there's still one thing that is making me a little bit nervous about their chances to come away with a championship. There's a couple that kind of come to the top of my mind here. I would still put being a consistent pass rushing team. Now, I was looking at some of these numbers from Pro Football Reference and looking at some advanced defensive statistics, getting after the quarterback and such. So according to Pro Football Reference, the leader in the league, the two teams that are leading the league in pressure percentage, that's hurries, knockdowns, all sack plays per drop back, okay? Dallas Cowboys are at number 1 at 28.1%, Cleveland 28%, and then Minnesota's 26.4%, Chicago 26.3%. Denver's at 5%, Detroit's is actually at 6 at a 25.8%. So you've got 3 of the 4 NFC North teams in the top 6 in quarterback pressures percentage per dropback. I will admit, Green Bay was actually a little bit higher on the list than what I thought they were going to come in. When I looked this up, I was like, okay, they got to be, bottom third maybe at best. They're actually right at the halfway mark. They're 16th. They're 16th in the league. Actually tied with the 0.1% back from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Green Bay 21.7% pressure rate. That's 16th in the league, right at that halfway mark. So we mentioned 0.1% away from the Steelers and the 49ers. Buffalo is up there too at a 22.2%. So to be honest, that was something that I was like, oh, okay, a little bit higher than I thought. Now, take away the percentage. If we just do total quarterback pressures, Green Bay is still about halfway, actually a little bit higher than halfway. They've got 97 total pressures. That's tied with the Rams and the Buffalo Bills. The Vikings have the most at 138. Detroit second most at 126. Sack-wise, if you're just looking at sacks, Green Bay still higher than the top half. In fact, they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So they're 14th, just inside the top half. But they're 14th in the league in sacks. Actually tied with the Colts and the Browns and the Commanders, 32. Broncos have the most with 44. Texans, 42. So, point being that there's some of these numbers, like when we talk about pressure rates and pressures and all that. I'll be honest, Green Bay was a little bit higher than I thought. And when we look at another one, quarterback hurries per dropback, Green Bay again is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So just outside the top 10 in quarterback hurries per dropback. They're at a, for all you analytics peeps out there, 8.3%. A lot of numbers, I understand that. Point being again was, okay, when you deep dive into it, I'd still want to see improvement on it. I'd rather have them be a top 10 unit instead of 16th in like pressure rates and, top 10 in sacks and all that sort of stuff. But I'll be honest, it was actually a little bit higher. I thought they would be lower. I thought they would be much lower on this list. The one thing that they are fairly high on this list that they got to figure out and they got to get much better at, missed tackles. 81 missed tackles, according to Pro Football Reference right now. That is the 6th most in the entire National Football League. The Colts have the most missed tackles at 98. Rams, 93. Texans, 86. Jets, 84. Raiders, 84. Packers next at 81 missed tackles. and the teams that have the fewest missed tackles. So I said, Green Bay's not that far off from like Pittsburgh. When you think of Pittsburgh, you think of pass rushers, think of T.J. Watt. Cam Hayward, I think I saw yesterday, was actually leading the Steelers in pressures on his team in that. You think of those guys. But how are they like just barely above Green Bay in pressure rate? You want to know one thing they do well? They don't miss tackles. 42 missed tackles. Tied with Buffalo for the fewest. 42. That's nearly half of what Green Bay has right now. That's one thing for sure Green Bay's got to figure out. Got to get better at that. Clean up those missed tackles. So, I would say they've been better. They've been getting better, and I would argue that I think there's certain game plans where maybe they didn't put a ton of pressure on the opposing quarterbacks. If they're a mobile quarterback, you're looking at Anthony Richardson and such. Jalen Hurts maybe in the first week too. But I think once you get into the postseason and once, you've got to be at least consistent in getting after the quarterback and pressuring those guys, especially if you are going to play more of a zone pass coverage, helping out your corners there a little bit. So while they haven't been as bad as I thought they were in terms of pressure and getting after it, you'd still like to see that uptick a little bit more, especially against Detroit. It's going to be tough. Okay, let's be real. That Detroit's got one of the best offensive lines in the game. Sewell hasn't allowed a sack all year long. If Rashawn Gary's going to be lined up over there, it might be a long day for Rashawn Gary. But, looking at that Detroit game, how do you get after the quarterback? How is Jeff Hafley? This is probably going to be a key matchup when we get to it on Thursday. How is Jeff Hafley going to generate a pass rush? How is he going to generate pressure getting after Jared Goff and not allowing him to get the ball out quick and not allowing him to be comfortable in the behind the pocket? And the thing is, too, Green Bay is a team that doesn't blitz a whole lot. When we look at, again, according to ProFootballReference.com, Green Bay is towards the bottom in the amount of times they blitz per dropback. Green Bay blitzes 17.9%. 17.9%. The highest team in the league is the Minnesota Vikings at 33.7%. 33.7% of the time per dropback, Minnesota's blitzing. Green Bay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th. 7th in the league. 7th fewest. If you kind of want to, the total number of blitzes, you got Minnesota at 176 and Green Bay's 80. So they don't blitz a whole lot. It'll be interesting considering what we saw in Game 1 with the Detroit Lions and how quick Jared Goff was getting the ball out of his hands and the shorter pass routes and the shorter completions and such. Do they change the game plan up a little bit where they employ some more blitz? Where they try to get some pressure right away in Jared Goff's face, where he's not allowed to get that ball out and on his target. Generating some pressure, they got to figure out going up against a very good offensive line. Going up against an offense that can get the ball out quick, wants to get the ball out quick. How do you generate that pressure? Especially if you are a defensive team that hasn't blitzed a whole lot this year. How do you confuse Jared Goff? Those are going to be questions that Hafley and his staff have to figure out this week in preparation for that game. Maybe we'll see a Packers team that's going to be blitzing a whole lot more. Maybe we're going to see that. But that's definitely something that they've got to figure out this week. But that is one of the things, even going for the rest of the season, going up against teams like Minnesota as well. Still a question mark for me is like, okay, how do you get after Sam Darnold? How do you rattle him a little bit? Goes back to that pressure. Hopefully, from what we've seen in these last couple weeks here, this is something that they're going to continue to be able to do well at a high level, getting that pressure on the quarterback. I think another thing too for me, two more that came to mind that maybe I've got some questions about or maybe some concerns about yet when I think about this Packers team. I'll start with the drops. I'm still looking at Dontavian Wicks. He's been dealing with some drops there. Obviously, the Christian Watson one against the 49ers. You look at his overall as a team, I'd still get a little bit nervous with the drops, especially if it's a touchdown drop, that Christian Watson one, or a drop that could extend the drive on a third down or something like that. That still makes me a little bit nervous. I'm still a little bit nervous about that. Hoping that this team can figure it out. Now, when you look at, guys across the league who have the most drops, Amari Cooper, according to FoxSports.com right now, has the most drops at 11. He's played in 10 games, and he's got 11 drops. Dontavian Wicks has the second most drops, though. 8. He's got 8 drops. There is another Packer in the top 10. Jaden Reed comes in at number 6 with 7 drops. Romeo Doubs comes in at number 11 with 6 drops. So you've got 3 Packers. Tucker Kraft actually comes up at 22 with 5 drops. That's a lot of Packer players on this drop list. That is still something that's going to make me a little bit nervous. And that's why still, I'm like, I've got no problem with this team wanting to focus on running the football. Being a run-first team, utilizing Josh Jacobs. Riding it with number 8 over there. And staying with the offense, I still think you got to look at penalties, especially your offensive line penalties, or your pre-snap penalties, your false starts, right? Or the offensive line holding. You're looking at some of those penalties that just really derail you. And when I'm looking at the numbers right now, though, this is according to NFLpenalties.com. Penalties against. Baltimore's got 105. Tennessee is next. Houston, the Jets, Seattle, New England, Carolina, Cleveland, Dallas, Denver, and then Green Bay. Green Bay's got 81 penalties counted against them. So just outside the top 10 there, or at number 10. Something you got to clean up. Now, pre-snap. When we look at pre-snap penalties, Green Bay is third most. That's what we're talking about, right? Pre-snap penalties. Cleveland, the worst at 48. Chicago, 43. Green Bay at 40. Yeah. 40 pre-snap penalties. Inexcusable. Green Bay is 2, 4, 6, 8, right around 10 in terms of total flags. Baltimore has been the most flagged team. You want to talk about a team, Harbaugh. Harbaugh gets a lot of credit. He's a good coach and all that. But a lot of people, when you talk about a team that's really penalized, they look at coaching. Well, you've got Harbaugh, Baltimore, 124 total flags. They're the most penalized team in the league right now. But Green Bay's right there too. Pittsburgh's actually right behind Green Bay in a lot of these categories. Green Bay's actually been flagged more at home this year than they have been on the road, 49-32 at this current time. So, but that's another thing too, especially the pre-snap penalties. The pre-snap penalties, got to figure those out, or the holding calls, because I know we're just kind of using our memory banks here a little bit, but how many times can we picture, Josh Jacobs busting open for a run and it's called back due to a hold. Felt like that happened in almost every single game at the beginning of the year. So those are just a few things that I'm a little bit nervous about, still question about. I would even throw in Jordan Love's been better the last couple weeks not throwing picks, but there's still been a couple throws that's like, ugh! What'd you see there? Why'd you make that throw? Was that the smartest thing? Got lucky that it wasn't a pick. But those are probably the things I'm still a little concerned about. They've been getting better. But those to me are things that could derail this season, could stop this season, or could hold the Packers back from advancing deep into the postseason. Continue to get pressure on quarterbacks, especially against teams like Detroit. I feel like the way to slow down that Detroit offense, to stop that, you got to get after Jared Goff. You can't make him comfortable. But the Lions do just a fantastic job. Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, just does a fantastic job of making things easy and comfortable for Jared Goff, getting the ball out quick and utilizing the two-headed running back monster of Gibbs and Montgomery. It's easier said than done. But generating that pressure on quarterbacks. Bill Belichick was actually just talking about it yesterday. Getting for teams. I think he was specifically mentioning Detroit too. And obviously with Hutchinson out, is taking a hit on their pass rush. But he talks about, Detroit like to see them getting more consistent pass rushing from their defense. But coming down the stretch here and into the postseason, you want to have that pressure. You want to be able to get after the quarterback in that. And then Green Bay's been doing better, but I want to see that consistently. Start to stack success more than just 2 weeks. Cleaning up the pre-snap penalties, cleaning up the holding penalties, and the dropsies from these receivers. You got a few guys up there you don't want to see in top 10 or just outside the top 10. And you don't want those drop passes to be drive killers. If it's on a 3rd and 4 and you drop a pass at 6 yards, can't happen.